Welcome to the Idea Climbing Podcast. If you want to achieve peak performance, you can probably benefit by creating a performance bubble. I discuss how to do that with my guest, Craig Domann. Craig is a veteran NFL agent who has negotiated more than $500 million worth of contracts for more than 300 NFL athletes, coaches, and now high school and college athletes. His journey as a sports attorney has shown him that having a pro mindset is key to a successful pro athlete career. Craig released a book, Pro Mindset, Be Your Best in Your Biggest Moments, and he has a podcast, Pro Mindset Podcast, where he discusses with guests on his show the mental ingredients that are common for elite performers, and then he transfers that knowledge in insightful stories and daily applications. We dive into topics such as how to turn up the volume on the positive voices in your head, how an entrepreneur can find good counsel to shorten their learning curve, 4 ways to maintain the performance bubble once you're in it, and other golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Thank you for joining the Idea Climbing Podcast today, Craig. I appreciate you making the time.
Absolutely, Mark. I'm excited about it.
And I'd love to jump in. We're going to talk about performance bubble, which in a short conversation before I hit record just sounds absolutely awesome. Before we get into some of the strategies and the details of it, how did you discover the performance bubble? What's your story with that?
Well, the performance bubble is like a secret weapon that the best of the best utilize to create a mental space so that they can be in the zone. Michael Jordan was amazing at this, okay? And so Patrick Mahomes does this. It doesn't matter how many receivers he has go down, what kind of adversity he's dealing with. It's only 13 seconds on the clock, and it's the AFC Championship game against the Bills. It doesn't matter. He goes in this zone, in this performance bubble. It's effective whether you're in business and you got a big time sales call, whether you're an athlete and you've got a big game. And what it does is it creates this safe zone where you block out all the things that work against you. Fear, doubt, what happened the last time, what somebody told you, hey, it's like a basketball player high school kid showing up at a basketball game, and the coach says, you're going to guard number 17. Okay, coach, I got it. He looks over there, number 17, 6 inches taller and doing 360 jams. And all of a sudden, he's like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? When you're in that performance bubble, those types of things don't throw you off your game. And everybody that's listening has been in one of those situations where they had their act together. They had their game plan. They show up for whatever they need to show up for, and their bubble got bursted by some curveball, some unexpected comment, objection, whatever it may have been. So the performance bubble creates a safe zone, safe mental space where you can be your best in your biggest moments.
So where does it start? How do you get started with creating a performance bubble?
Number one is the awareness that you have one, and that if you don't have one, you're going to be great until you're not. If you don't have one, you're going to be awesome because you prepared for it, you strategized, you might have visualized about it, until they throw you that curveball, then it blows up in your face, okay? Or you have your pocket voice, which is talking to you at the same time that you're doing the presentation, says, hey man, remember the last time you were in this situation? It didn't work out so well. And that thought comes in, and now you're operating on that negative thought. So the performance bubble is it's boundaries and anchors. The boundaries block out the noise, past failures, all those, the results. Think about sports or think about business. If you're counting your check, your commission check, before the meeting's over, most of the time, you don't get the check because you're so attached to the results and the outcome. When you can just fully embody why you're there, what you're doing, and let the results take care of itself, the scoreboard usually tilts in the right direction. Your bank account looks pretty good. And so the bubble is, going back to the boundaries and anchors, it's blocking out the things that don't serve you. And everything that does serve you gets to come in. And so I always talk about you step into that bubble on game day. You step into that bubble when you walk in the boardroom. And the only thing that gets to come with you are belief in who you are, confidence in what you're going to do.
So
All the preparation you did gets to come in. All the practice you did gets to come in. You visualizing yourself on the drive to the meeting or the bus ride to the stadium. You visualized it. You visualized it maybe for the whole week. That gets to manifest itself in the performance bubble.
So this is a big one. How the heck do you stop the negative voices? Because I would imagine in sports, and I know for a fact in business, especially if someone gives presentations, those voices can just decimate someone's mental state. How do you block them out or at least quiet them?
Okay. Great question. Mark, here's the deal. The volume on the negativity gets turned up the highest when the moment is the biggest. When you really want the deal, when you really want to, you're a high jumper and this is to win the event, to win the gold in the Olympics. That's when the volume gets turned up the most. So your question is, how do you lower the volume?
Yeah.
Two ways. In advance, you have to work on your story. You have to work on your identity. Because if you don't modify your identity, the same person keeps showing up. So you got to backtrack and look at, why do you believe that about yourself? Why do you have stage fright? Why do you not want to take the shot when the game's on the line? That's something that's done before the event. But once you're in the event, you have an escape hatch in the performance bubble that allows you to regulate your mental state so that if something we're all human. We're going to have those thoughts. You can have the best crafted plan, and then all of a sudden, it could be, the guy gets a phone call that interrupts the whole mojo of the meeting. In sports, there's always the ball doesn't bounce your way. The official throws a flag or whatever the case may be. When those things happen, you have to have a regulator of your mental state, which is, on the simplest terms, hey, nice try. You have a conversation with yourself. Nice try. Not today, baby. Not today. This is not going to mess with me today. Maybe the last time, but not this time. And you basically take the power away from that inner voice, your pocket voice, because you knew it might happen. You were ready for it. And when it showed up, you sent it out the escape hatch. So you protect the sacredness of your performance bubble.
So that's turning down the bad stuff. How do you turn up all the good stuff you just mentioned?
That's through elevating your standards. In pro mindset, there's three parts: rewriting your story, elevating your standards, and showing up on stage with your performance bubble so you can be your best. Well, if you elevate your standards, for example, in business, it's like you can't expect to be your best when you didn't prepare your best, when you didn't practice, when you didn't get wise counsel from people in your office or on your team or whatever the case may be. As an athlete, you can't expect to be your best if you didn't look at the playbook or the game plan for that week. Okay. So all those things have to be there. And I tell my clients in the NFL, your standard has to be higher than your coach's standard. If he wants you to be there 15 minutes early, you got to be there 20. If you're running late, you're there 16 minutes early, you're still ahead of his standard. You have to raise your standards so your standards are higher. If you're an entrepreneur, you don't do what your competition does. You have to raise your standard above your competition. Otherwise, you can't expect the results.
Where can an entrepreneur find good counsel? I would imagine that's paramount to have, whether it's a mentor or someone like that. How does an entrepreneur go about finding good counsel?
That's a great question. Find somebody that's 10 years ahead of you, that's successful, and honestly reach out to them and don't be their enemy. One of the things that's really interesting, when I was in the full-scale agent business, we would go to the NFLPA agent seminar in Indianapolis during the combine every year. It was a mandatory meeting, so everybody showed up. It didn't matter if you represented Peyton Manning, if you represented somebody nobody knew. You showed up at that event. And people wouldn't talk to each other. People don't talk to each other. They don't make eye contact. They're not friendly. They're like enemies. You go to a dental or pharmaceutical convention in Vegas, those dudes are playing golf together. They're hanging out together. They're sharing funny stories together. Best practices, best vendors. So what happens is you can either be like an NFL agent, see everybody in your business as an enemy, or you can be like a mainstream professional that goes, you know what? I can't spend all the money in this industry, so I don't need to make it all. You just want to double or triple in size. That's great. But these people that are in your business or in your industry are not enemies. You can turn them into allies.
So what do you do? This is great. With in a sense of a conference that most business entrepreneurs, because they're salespeople too. What do you do before you get into a networking event to have a performance bubble for success?
That's a great question. Give me a little bit more texture, and because I can give you a general answer, but if you give me a little bit more texture, I'll give you a more specific answer.
You're going to an event, the end result is in some way to increase your business, but you don't want to be that slick salesperson that's like, oh God, here comes Mark. He's going to pitch me again. But at the same time, you do have to get new clients. So you got to, it's a balancing act, I think, between just going in to make friends and have fun and collect 20 business cards or actually grow your business. What can you do before you walk into an event like that at a conference or a business networking event where people are there to network? It's not a cocktail party, it's a networking event. What can you do before you walk in the room?
Okay, that's a great question. I think the tactic that I would want to accomplish would be to understand that everybody there already has somebody that does what you do. They don't need you. Because if they needed you, they would already have you, but they've got somebody else. So you're not going to come in and be that slick salesman that's going to convince them that you're better than everybody else in the world and they should switch whatever that service is that you provide and use you. So the best way you could go, and from my perspective, is I just want to know, I just want to get your information, find out if you're happy, and offer to give them a second opinion at a later time. So I'm getting contacts, I'm getting information, and I'm setting up a discovery call for a week or two down the road with as many people as I can. And the genre of the conversation is, hey, Mark, we met at the conference down in Orlando. You were so kind to give me your information. Hey, how many minutes you got today? Because I don't want to take up too much of your time. You got 15? Okay, let's take 15. At the end of 15, if for some reason you got to go, I'm gonna understand. But if what we're talking about is really working for you, I've left an hour of time that we could keep going. So I do X, Y, and Z. You've obviously got somebody that does X, Y, and Z. You might have multiple people that do X, Y, and Z. What's the best thing that the people do that you work with that makes your business jam, gives you less stress, higher profit margins, less time issues, whatever the case may be? Let them tell you. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. What's the headache? What's the headache that you constantly have to deal with people that do what I do? Oh, they're never on time. They overpromise. They always call me up and say, hey man, not my bad, but you know what? It's going to show up a week later. Not saying I could, Mark, but I have people that I have influence over that work with me that are in my vertical line that help me deliver my promises on a timely basis. Did you tell me that was important to you? Oh, yeah. How much does that cost you? How much does that cost you? Well, it costs you time because now you got to call your people and tell them you're running late. And so I'm not saying I could, but I do it for my other people. So would it make sense to do a one-off and let's do an experiment to see if my people can actually deliver on time? And that's going to save you hassle. It's going to save you money. And if by chance it goes well, instead of just doing one-off, maybe we talk about an agreement where I become one of your people. So you're not going to accomplish it in Orlando at the conference. You're not going to accomplish. Everybody's got their guard up. Everybody's in protection mode. Everybody's giving you the stiff arm. Like, hey, bro, I'm just here to meet people. I don't want to, I don't want all this change going on in my business or my life right now. But once they get away from that environment and you set up the follow-up call, they're going to be more open-minded. And then if you just don't try to beat up the guys they got, but you try to solve the problem they have, you might get a chance.
So once you get into the right frame of mind, backing up just a little bit, when you actually get on the field, get on the stage, get into the event, How do you maintain the performance bubble and not let it pop once you're in there?
That's wonderful. Let's take a scenario where let's just use sports. Everybody can identify with sports at some level. Let's say you're, NFL quarterback. You know, the week leading up to the game, you're going to do self-scouting on what you did well and didn't do well the previous week, because the defensive coordinator is going to be looking at the same thing. So he's going to try to take away what you did well and put you in a situation where you're going to do more and more of what you don't do well. Number two is you're going to understand the game plan that your coaches have outlined for you against the defense that you're going to play this next week. And you're going to know your playbook inside and out. You're going to have a great relationship with your offensive linemen on the blitz protection calls. You're going to have a great timing with your receivers. They're all going to think you're trying to look for them on every single play because they want to feel some love in addition to getting the ball. So you don't want that guy coming back to the huddle going, bro, man, I was open. I'm 7-11, baby. I was open 24/7. You never looked at me. You know what? There's only one ball and there's 5 eligible receivers on every play. So you can't, and sometimes you're not even going to get to throw the ball. So you're going to have a wonderful relationship with your receivers. And then you're going to visualize what you see happening in the game before the game. You're going to do it every night, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it takes, because you can visualize so fast. And you're going to visualize the most important plays of the game. 3rd and long, red zone, 4th and got to get it, okay, into the game situations. And then what you're going to do is remember who you are. God creates everybody perfectly imperfect. He created you for a purpose. He created me for a different purpose. He created this quarterback for a purpose. At the end of the day, he's in the NFL for a reason. So getting reconnected with why you're there. And then think about all the times that you spent in the offseason training camp work, extra work with your receivers. Maybe you take 15 minutes after Wednesday's practice and work out with one of your rookie receivers to get on the same page because his head's still spinning. So that when you show up and you're aware that, hey, you know what? I got a crazy, crazy girlfriend. I got a crazy wife. Okay. So the reason why she's crazy is because I don't return her texts. I don't call her when I tell her I'm going to call her. I end up staying late and don't tell her. So she's got dinner for me and it's cold when I get home. No, I'm going to be more honest with my partner so that there's no friction with my partner. I'm going to have a conversation with her that, hey, once I leave on Saturday to go to the team hotel, I'm gone. So I'm not going to respond to your text. If you want to send me a love text, that's great, but I'm not responding. I'm not even going to look at my phone. So you have an upfront agreement with your partner of how you're going to operate pregame. Then you're going to get together with your offensive coordinator. And you're going to go, hey, coach, I don't really feel comfortable with this play. You're going to have the list of plays you don't feel comfortable with and the ones that you fall in love with. And you're going to tell and communicate with him honestly on Saturday night, because on Sunday, you can't get pissed off in the middle of the game when he calls the play you don't want him to call because you didn't tell him you didn't want him to call it. You should know what the OC is going to call in a big moment before he calls it, because you've already talked about it and you've already told him what you think. Then when you get in the game and, hey, let's say you've got TJ Watt across the line and he just sacks you for a 10-yard loss. You're going to hop up and pat him on the ass and say, hey, man, that was awesome. You ain't going to get you're not causing no smack talk with the guys that are trying to kill you. Okay. And when the official calls a holding call on a 78-yard touchdown pass, when you'd like to tell him to go fly a kite and, stick it where the sun doesn't shine, you go, hey, you know what? You're humble, you're composed, because you're going to get another shot, and you don't want the guy looking harder for that flag because he's trying to get back at you for something you said. So I could go on and on. It's all of that. It's all of that. So what happens is when you show up, and let's say you guys start the game out first series, and you're trotting out on the field for the first play of the game, all the noise is blocked out. All the potential conflict with your coaches, your teammates, the officials, and the opponents. You've got that in an orderly fashion. You remember who you are. You're a badass. You were born to do this. Nobody on the planet has worked harder to be in this position than you have. And you can make every throw in your sleep that the coach could ask you to throw. So what do you got to lose?
Yeah. So is a performance bubble something that gets, whether it's the field, the boardroom, or somewhere in between, do you recreate it every time you go into a situation, or does it at one point just start to maintain itself, or is it a constant evolution and recreation?
I think it's a constant evolution. It's one of those things where it's like an Apple phone. We're at we're at iPhone 16. It's not even close to, the first edition. They don't make as many adjustments or enhancements as we move forward. So the longer you create and utilize a performance bubble,
Mhm.
the more micro the adjustments are going to be later on. But in the beginning, they're going to be major. When you fail, that's a red flag. You've got a corruption in your performance bubble. Failure
Mhm.
is good. Every time you fail, it's a way to self-correct, update, and adjust your performance bubble because you shouldn't. I mean, the NFL, you get caught if you start making the same mistake twice.
Mhm.
They don't care if you make a mistake, just don't make the same mistake twice. Well, in business, you don't want to make the same mistake twice. You want to make new mistakes. Makes life more fun. And when you show up, the mistakes start getting smaller.
That is awesome. We have covered such a lot of ground in such a short period of time. Someone's listening or watching or thinking, I get this. There was a lot of good stuff in there. If you were to say, with the performance bubble, above all else, if you're gonna do something, at least do this one thing. What would you tell them to do?
Get out a piece of paper and draw a bubble. And everything that serves you, put in that bubble. For this next game, this next event, this next meeting, this next sales call. Everything that serves you, put in the bubble. Just write it in there, what it is. And everything that doesn't, everything that screws you up, whether it doesn't matter if it's business or non-business interference, noise. Doesn't matter what happened the last time you called on this doc or this company. Doesn't get to come. You actually write it down on a piece of paper. And now you've got this mental picture. It's like 1D. I mean, this is kindergarten level, but at least it's a start.
That is awesome. Thank you. And if people want to find you online, where's the best place or places to go?
My website is Craig Domann. You can see it in the show notes, craigdomann.com. I do coaching. I have a book called Pro Mindset that talks about the performance bubble. I do speaking. So you can go to my website and also inquire about speaking. And then you can also go to Amazon. You can buy my book on my website. You can buy it on Amazon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been great, Craig.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
And scene.